Okay, so I know that what we've asked you to do is talk about anxiety, but it's within this larger Theology of Joy project. And some people may be thinking, how in the world can you put anxiety and joy in the same conversation or in the same sentence? Could you just tell me how you're thinking about anxiety in relationship to joy? What is joy?
I think joy for kids gets started when they get to tell their story. And so that's kind of that story being heard, being attended to, being listened to is the beginning of joy for young people. And so then the next week they come into youth group again and you know their name or you know some part of their story or what mattered to them. And that is, I think of it as being kept in mind by someone else. And that is, that's actually, for me, the heart of pastoral care, being kept in mind by others so that they can experience how God keeps them in mind. So for me, joy starts there. And for teenagers, I think it has to include, it has to track with their real life. So joy can't be something that you say just feel better about this and impose it from the outside, but it has to go with what they're really going through and what they're experiencing. I think joy also has the opportunity to get kids out of the identified patient position. So if you've got a teenager who everybody agrees is a problem, and the parents come in and they want you to counsel that teen as the problem, sometimes shifting the focus for that teen can be really helpful. Focusing on the parents, focusing on the broader society and the impact of oppression on them, but giving them some break from being that kind of the person with the problem. And then giving kids a chance to kind of rebel, not conform, question the norms of your group, and giving permission for that also kind of fosters a joyful accompaniment, I think, where kids can feel like they can really bring themselves when they come to church or your youth group or encounter you in a nonprofit setting. Those are some ways I would get started thinking about joy.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate that. A couple of things I would add is I think joy also relates to feeling deeply valued for who one is inherently, as opposed to harking back to our earlier conversation, one's status in the family or the community or the school. All that can be important and maybe enriching, but I think a deeper kind of joy begins at a more fundamental level, which is that I feel inherently valued as a human being for who I am. And we spend some time thinking about sort of how that can play out in various contexts. And I do a lot of work on mentoring. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that mentors can offer young people, and whether it's in churches or in schools or other kinds of communities that they're a part of, athletic teams, is really committing to that inherent worth and looking for opportunities to reinforce that, which again it may be tied to status or achievement, but not necessarily so. In other words, you can praise kids for their accomplishments and for working hard and succeeding in school or sports or life or whatever it is. But also more important, I think, is conveying a sense of value in that relationship that isn't dependent on that, so that particularly when kids fail or hit a rough patch in whatever they're working toward, they have that relationship and the values that inform that relationship to fall back on. And so there's an approach to mentoring that's called positive youth development, and one of the principal values in that approach is focusing on helping a young person develop a sense of competence, that who they are and what they do is not only valued, but it's unshakable, right? Even amidst failures or the lack of success that they may be striving for.
Yeah, when I was a camp counselor, I was meeting with a anxious, somewhat distressed young person, and I read Psalm 139 with her, where it says that you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And her eyes just lit up, and she said, "That's me?" And I said, "Yeah, that was written for you. That applies directly to you." And that seemed like a turning point or a starting place for her, some kind of holy ground for her.
I think one other thing that comes to mind in thinking about joy is creating a space where people can thrive as they need to thrive, and so that looks different for different people. But I think in mentoring, as educators with students, I think it's important to try to recognize that space may look a little different for different people, but it's still that space where generativity and creativity, self-value, value of the other, all of that ideally comes together to inform this sort of deeper sense of self. And as we started out saying, a deeper place for a lasting kind of joy that, particularly when times get more difficult, is a resource that people can reach back to.